Welcome to Toronto Sports Rush. We are joining you live with breaking news. I am joined, of course, by Dennis Bernstein, senior writer from the Fourth Period and host for SiriusXM NHL Network Radio. Dennis, I'm sure you've been following, but it's been an interesting 48-hour news cycle here in Toronto, and it's been capped off now by the Toronto Maple Leafs with an 8.5% chance receiving the first overall pick in the next NHL entry draft.
And you thought this offseason was going to be boring after yesterday. No,
We're just not running out of
never,
news.
never a dull moment, Kyle. What a turn. What a turn, like WWE, right?
Yes,
It's a big turn, a big heel turn. Hey,
it's remarkable.
yep. Well, there's your Mitch Marner replacement. There's 2 years with Austin Matthews. We'll see
So,
if it changes the paradigm.
Dennis, I have so many questions about this for these exact reasons because there's just no scenario in which they're not taking Gavin McKenna with this pick, is there?
I can't see it. No, you can't see it.
Like
You can't blow, you can't blow this
that's
pick.
not a slight of Ivar Stenberg by any stretch, but I mean this is a generational talent who is Canadian, who's been heavily
Mhm.
marketed in this
Yep.
country through the World Juniors and through international play in television commercials for major networks, and he of course had the big NIL deal at Penn State. It just
Mhm.
this seems to what a gift for new general manager John Chayka to receive. His first major decision is basically being made for him.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to be the guy. You've
Yeah.
guys got, you've got Austin, you've got Willie. He doesn't have to be the guy. I was kidding when I said there's the Marner replacement. When you look at the player and how he plays, he's not going to play like Mitch Marner in the first year, but he can play in that role. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really nice fit there. What how fortuitous is for this franchise that needed a boost, and now they get a player who I'm not sure first year is going to come in and put up 80 points, but certainly when he's going to be playing top 6 minutes, I would assume. So yeah, I don't see them going any other direction in Kevin McKenna. It would be foolish to do that.
I think it would as well. You just simply, whether you need puck moving defensemen or not, this has so many repercussions, and let's
Right.
get into those now. As you say, he's not going to come in and score 80 points right away, but he's an NHL player immediately. But unlike someone like Connor Bedard, he will not be shouldering the load of this hockey team.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is that this is a team that, look, they didn't play well down the stretch, right? You could see they spit the bit. I get it. But had they played harder, they would have been a better team. And even a team like San Jose, they missed by what? They had like, I don't know, 88 points, 86 points. So
Yeah.
they added to the existing core that they have. Now you have another core piece that you didn't have to do. You have to trade a first round pick for. You don't have to trade a roster player for. Now you got another core player to add to this roster. That's a huge win for the franchise coming off a less than great press conference yesterday. But when you look at the roster, it's saying now it's improved. Now it should be better. Now, but it also raises the expectations a year. Now you think, oh, maybe next year they regress a little bit, maybe they trade away a core player. Now they're not going to do that. Like now they just added a core player. What else can they add to this roster to make it a contender next season?
Yeah, and it's just remarkable from so many angles to have this fall into their lap the way it has here, and it changes the complexion of so many things. The least of which is all the conversation around whether Austin Matthews is staying or going. He has to be looking at this salivating, knowing there's now another top gun to take some of the pressure off of him in the immediate future.
Yeah, no question. I think that's one of the big questions here. It was like, what is Austin going to do? And now Austin said all the right things. He did. Unlike Connor, he signed him for 4 years in Toronto. So could this help him stay past the contract? Of course it could. Like, because if the team's going to be contender with Gavin McKenna and he can mentor this kid, because he's never had to really mentor anybody before. Everybody was kind of his age or
Mhm.
older. Now it's a situation where you have a young kid coming in who's really heralded, all the hype around him. He can help grow this kid into an elite NHL player. So I think from a motivational standpoint, it's got to give Austin extra motivation and probably another reason to say, hey, look, by the way, it's not that bad. Don't listen to the outside noise. Look at the team that we have. We're going to make some additions as well on top of this. So if you're Austin Matthews right now, you if you were predisposed to saying this is it for me, the team hasn't been any good. Well, now this has changed the conversation around Austin and what he might do past the end of this contract.
And I mean, when you look down the list of needs of this team, obviously
Yeah,
puck moving defensemen remain.
sure.
Probably need one and two. They could definitely use one of them. They should probably have two of them. And it won't do a lot of good to have them on the team if there's no one to get the puck up from their own
Agreed.
end. However, this is a generational talent they're looking at here. And another one of their needs was another top six forward potential.
Correct.
And Gavin McKenna should probably be a top six forward right out of the gate.
Agreed. And you may be able to put together assets to get that puck moving defenseman out there, right? But it's not going to take away from your core. Now
Yes.
you can trade a future now that you're gonna have to give up one to Boston in that trade anyway. But there's probably a combination of assets that you do to go get that other player in the market. So this one was a freebie because you just won a lottery, but now you're gonna have to do the work, make a trade, give up some assets to get that puck moving defenseman. But it lines up nicely for Chaika in his first season, in his first off season as a Leafs GM.
And Dennis, you had mentioned earlier that the Leafs played poorly down the stretch. It seems to me as though, as of right now, they played perfectly down the stretch because they fell into fifth last place in the last week of the season. And had they
Yeah.
not done so, they would have not had this pick in this lottery. It would have gone to Boston. It's a fortuitous change of events that is just
Agreed.
following a remarkable, or I guess the bookend of a remarkable 48-hour news cycle in Toronto. From a fan's perception, and of course, this is a speculation, the mood has not really been great since Sunday afternoon when the news of the new management positions had been dropped. How
Mhm.
much does this change that? Because this is really a softball being tossed at their new GM. It's really setting him up for success early. He still will have a lot of work to do, but the conversation in Toronto as of an hour ago is no longer about the new GM entirely.
Yeah.
It's now about this team's future may be a little bit brighter than most suspected.
Yeah, I think that's good for MLSE because they took a PR hit yesterday because the combination of Chaika and Matt Sundin, all unproven. Like Matt Sundin's never been an executive anywhere. Chaika, we know his history, and I'll leave that alone. We know his history in Arizona. Wasn't great. But now I think if you're a fan though, Kyle, you have to have a wait and see attitude, even with this win. Because I want to see, if
Sure.
I'm a fan, I want to see what this team looks like on July 5th, after free agency, after some possible trades. Like, why does the roster look? Because right now, yeah, it's a great ad, but you mentioned there's still holes on the roster. What does Shika do between now and before everybody goes to their cottages in July to make this roster better? At that point in time, I think it's a more fair assessment of what this team could be next season.
Yeah, and I guess the true test, as you just alluded to, is in fact what he can do from now to then, because this team, they would obviously like to say all the right things in press conferences yesterday and say we want to come out and be competitive immediately.
Sure.
This changes the focus on that, and that there's a genuine opportunity with one or two more pieces to change the complexion of this team. But if you look at their contract situation, they don't have a lot of room to move and flexibility. How would you navigate that?
Well, the one benefit is you're going to get Gavin McKenna on an entry level contract.
Yes.
Right? That, like this kid, like let's say he's not elite, but let's say he's an excellent top six guy. That's $8 million a year player in this league.
Yes.
You're getting him for less than $1 million. So with limited cap, it's going to have to be a hockey trade, right? You're not going to be like you're not going to you're not going to take Darnell Nurse from Edmonton, right? That's not the move, right? So I think it's going to have to be money in, money out. When you're that tied against the cap, it's going to have to be a hockey trade that makes sense. So you have to find, maybe there's some retention involved. Maybe there's a third team involved, right? I can't give you the permutation of what a trade would be, but with this player coming up who should be a top six player on this team at a minimum salary contract, that's a huge win because it gives you more maneuverability to go fill those gaps that we talked about.
And so, with the new GM coming into this type of a situation, does this honestly, does this increase the pressure on his offseason performance in year one, or does this sort of soften the likely criticism coming his way?
Kyle, he's the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The pressure isn't going to lessen ever,
It was a
ever,
trick. It was a trick question, Dennis. I just wanted to make
ever.
sure.
Ever. And it's coming off a GM who really didn't do much.
No.
I think that's it. I think that maybe the bar's lowered because of what Tree did. Because if it went from Dubas, who's done a great job in Pittsburgh, look what Pittsburgh did. If it went from Dubas to Chaika, you're saying, wow, look at all the things he did. But Tree didn't really do much here. Like he lost
No.
Mitch Marner for nothing, while he got Nick Wall, whatever. Right. So the
Who's no
team
longer a
regressed.
Maple Leaf.
Yep, right. The team regressed under Tree. So while there's a clear path for John to succeed now, there's always going to be pressure. That first 3-game losing streak, fire the GM. He's a bum. He never should have been hired. So while I think it helps him with respect to building the team, Kyle, it doesn't lessen any pressure because that seat's always going to be red hot in good times and bad.
Yeah, and I mean, moving forward from all of this, this news it's a crazy turn of events in Toronto because of
Nice.
the
Yeah.
news cycle. You sit in a different perspective in the league, Dennis, covering the West
Mhm.
Coast. What
Yeah.
what was the reaction that you heard from people about the decisions they made for GM and to bring in Matt Sundin?
It was shocking. I think there was people established. I'll give you an example, like Ray Ferraro, like was shocked. I think the people that were in Arizona were shocked, right? But this guy, he did get a GM's job at 27. Now, I think some of it was maturity. So I guess in the interview process with Keith Pelly, like he probably owned the mistakes. Said I was a 27-year-old GM. I made mistakes. I'm now 7, 8 years older and wiser, and I'm ready for my second shot. So I think that's how you got to look at it. But yeah, were the eyebrows raised? Yeah. Were the more qualified active GMs that probably wanted this job? It's a plum job with all the pressure, Kyle. It's still a plum job. It's you probably have 20, 25 people that would line up to get this job. To go this route, it's unconventional. Certainly, they're going to look at analytics much deeper than maybe Tree did. Is there risk involved? Yeah, but Kyle, let's be real. Any GM you would hire, there's going to be risk. There's no guarantees. Look at Los Angeles here with Kenny Holland. Kenny Holland is a Hall of Famer. He's won 3 cups. The team regrets 15 standings points. So there's no guarantee. It is a risky hire. It is based on his track record. But sometimes the second go around works for guys, and maybe this is the case in Toronto. But it was certainly an outside the box hire, both for I mean, Matt Sundin's a legend in Toronto. He doesn't leave in Toronto. He's gonna have to move to Toronto. So yeah, a lot of eyebrows were raised around the league. A lot of people didn't like the hire, but the proof's in the pudding now. Now John's got to have to out improve the critics that said this was not the right hire for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And moving through the rest of the draft quickly, Dennis, San Jose getting the number 2 pick, they're in a phenomenal position already. They're going to get one of these two guys in all likelihood. It's going to be McKenna or Stenberg, number 1 and
Yeah.
2 in some order. I probably just said it in the right order. How are they sitting for next year? Because this is a big coup for them as well.
Well, if Mike Greer ever gets fired from San Jose, he can put on his resume, I know how to win lotteries. That's been his greatest gift, I think. I mean, he's built a team, but he got Macklin. He got Michael Meese as a second overall pick. Now he's got, Stenberg as a second overall pick. I will tell you this, there's probably more pressure on the guy who picks second than the guy who picks first. Because look at what they
Yeah.
have already in San Jose. Like, so you got to pick the
Yes.
right guy. Now, my Greer said on the interview on ESPN, I'm going to go with the best player available. And he said it's probably not going to help us right away. Right. But if you get that pick right with the rest of the grouping that he has there, that could be a Stanley Cup contending team. And they're not yet. So when I partially kid about what Greer's done great. The best thing he did for them was won the lottery and got in Celebrini. If you look at their blue line, there's a lot of free agents. There's a lot of guys who are subpar defenders. That's why they didn't make the playoffs. And I'm not sure about the goaltender. Ashcroft's had good nights and bad nights. So he still has work to do, as does Anaheim with all the great draft picks that they've had. They might get knocked out in the second round. So there's still work to do for Mike Greer. But nobody's set up better than Mike Greer of those top teams. I think the one franchise who's probably saying that the lottery was rigged, the poor people in Vancouver, those fans that thought that Gavin McKinnon was going to come to Vancouver. And now you don't even get a second overall pick. You get the third overall pick, which certainly will help that team. It was a bad team, Kyle. But San Jose is really, they could be a dangerous team. We could be talking about them going to a cup final maybe in 2 to 3 years. But there's still work to do for Mike Greer because that's an incomplete team right now. That's not a team that's ready to contend. And like Anaheim, it's because of the defense. It has to be better. So we'll see what Greer does on the blue line to make that team a legitimate contender.
In sticking with Vancouver, Dennis, this is the team that went wire to wire, doing their best to secure that
Yes.
overall number 1 pick. And the drop from 2 to 3 in this draft is particularly noteworthy this year because we
Sure.
do have these 2 ultra elite prospects near the top. Of course, we never know how it translates to the NHL, but just again, there must be incredible disappointment in Vancouver tonight.
It does. But I'll say this. Look at Connor Bedard, generational talent. And Chicago really hasn't done much with him. Like, they're still a bad team. So it's not just one player. And that's the one thing.
That's right.
Even if you're a Vancouver fan, even if you had gotten Gavin McKenna, it's not going to change the fate of that team next season. It's going to be a bad team again. You have to be bad like San Jose, even though they weren't bad this year. You have to be bad for multiple years, like Anaheim. Everybody's lauding Pat Verbeek and all the great drafting they did. They missed the playoffs for 7 straight years, Kyle. So there's a price to pay for that. And when talk about Vancouver about rebuilding, I talked to Ken Holland about that. I'll transition to why rebuilding is a dicey situation. Like I asked Ken Holland, like the team's lost 5 consecutive first round playoff series. What's the argument of keeping this group together as opposed to rebuilding and blowing up the team? He said, well, Dennis, you do that, so you're making an 8 to 10 year commitment with no guarantee on the back end. So, for example, for Los Angeles, they want to blow it up. They haven't won a playoff round since they won the Cup, Kyle. That's 12 years. I'm pretty good at math. So you're going to add another 8 years. So I tell Kings fans that want to blow it up, like Vancouver fans, you want to wait 20 years to wear a playoff round? No, you don't. Not with a 70-year-old, not with a 70-year-old GM here in LA. And the same thing with Vancouver. You want to wait that long? You may have to, but it's not easy. And here's the thing, Kyle. You can finish last, and you can get the first overall pick, and you get the second and third overall, and you can draft 3 or 4 really good young players. There's no guarantee. That's why it's the best trophy in all sports. It's hard to win the Stanley Cup because it's not just about drafting. And if you look at the teams that won, Kyle, like Tampa Bay, and going back to Dean Lombardi, let's talk about Bill Zito. What's Bill Zito's greatest gift? It wasn't drafting. It was making these incredible trades. So you might get the core, Kyle, and this is true for Toronto as well. You might get that core of 4 or 5 players. Last time I checked, it's a 23-man roster. You have to fill in all the gaps. So your core might be great, and I'll point to one team. There's no better core than the first 2 guys in Edmonton, and they still haven't won a cup in 10 years. So it's buyer beware. It's great to get these high picks. It's not the end-all, be-well. It doesn't solve all your problems. You're going to have to trade and sign your way to championship roster.
And let's stick with the theme of rebuilding as we end up on the Leafs once again here, Dennis.
Sure.
There was a lot of talk over the last few months of the season on this channel and throughout Toronto media and truly through NHL media, whether or not this team it was time to stop patching the holes in the drywall as they've done for so long, and whether it was time to blow things up, consider dealing Matthews, consider unloading some contracts and just having a fire sale. And it almost feels like right now with the new GM coming in, the type of style we expect from him, although let's be honest, we don't really know what to expect from him given his history.
Sure.
In this draft pick, it seems like an actual rebuild is off the table, and that may in fact be the best thing at this point.
Yeah, well, when you look at it, there's no, especially this year, there's no real powerhouse. Like you can think that okay, Carolina might get through, right? Look at Montreal. Montreal could get through, and they're a young team. So look. I don't think the market would stand for a rebuild. I don't think they're that far away, Kyle. To be honest with you, with a couple of good moves, a couple of big trades. So I just don't. I don't think that market and the organization has the appetite for it. If you're going to do that, I think you would went a different route with the GM. You would a guy who's a scouting GM who knows how to find talent. I just don't think that it's going to be in the mindset of MLSE to rebuild this team. I don't think it ever is. I think you're going to have to do it on the fly. A lot of teams have, and I mentioned these teams that done it. Bill Zito was brilliant when it comes to making trades. He traded a guy who had 110 points as a left wing, Jonathan Huberdeau, and he turned it into Matthew Tkachuk. He's going to have to make trades like that. He's going to have to win 2 or 3 big trades to do that. And that's a big task. That's a big ask. But I think that's the only direction this franchise can go. I don't see a rebuild in Toronto. It's certainly not now, if ever.
Dennis, it has been a remarkable 48-hour news cycle here in Toronto. Just a truly unexpected turn of events here tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight to discuss it. It's going to be an amazing offseason. I have a feeling I'll be seeing you again soon.
Kyle, it's always great being on TSR. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.